Itihasa consists of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The Mahabharata includes the story of the Kurukshetra War and also preserves the traditions of the lunar dynasty in the form of embedded tales. The Puranas narrate the universal history as perceived by the Hindus, cosmogony, myth, legend and history. The Ramayana contains the story of Rama and incidentally relates the legends of the solar dynasty. The classical Indian poets usually derive the story of the poetry and drama from the Itihasas. In our time, these traditions have been most carefully reconstructed from the available texts and arranged in chronological order by F. E. Mpanchratan in his compendium Ancient Indian Historical Tradition, Brahmanical Tradition, Cosmogony and the Antediluvian History. According to the Vedic traditions, human history proceeds in cycles, dependent on the evolutions and dissolutions of the world. Time is divided into 4 ages: Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvyapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, collectively forming one Mahayuga. 71 Mahayugas form a Manvantara, a period of time over which a Manu resides. In each cycle, this Manu is the first man and also the first king and lawgiver. Every Manvantara has its own set of Indra gods and 7 sages. 14 Manvantara create a kalpa, after which the creation comes to a close in a periodical destruction called pralaya. After that, the creation starts all over again in an endless cycle of evolutions and dissolutions. The traditions relate that the present kalpa is called Varaha. Out of the 14 Manvantaras of this kalpa, 6 have passed. The current Manvantara is called Vivasvata after the Manu who presides over it. It is to Vivasvata Manu that the royal genealogies of the Itihasa trace their origin. It was in the Kaksusa Manvantara, which immediately preceded the present Manvantara, that King Prithu, the great-grandson of Kaksusa Manu, leveled the earth, built cities and villages and developed agriculture, trade, pasture and cattle breeding. This cycle ended after only 8 more generations with the Great Flood. The Krita Yuga, the Great Flood at the end of Kaksusa Manvantara, wipes away all life forms. Only Vivasvata Manu is saved by Lord Vishnu in the avatar of the fish, Matsya, to repopulate the earth in the next cycle. All royal lines in our cycle are traced in the Itihasa from Manu, Vivasvata's sons and his only daughter Ela. This daughter, produced by means of a ritual, later becomes his wife. Ikshvaku, the eldest son of Manu, establishes the solar line at Ayodhya in Kosala. Ikshvaku's younger son Nimi migrates a little further east and founds the house of Videha. Its capital Mithila is established by his son Mithi, also called Janaka, which later becomes the generic name the kings of Videha. The lunar line is established at about the same time at Pratathana in Madyadsa by Pururavas, the son of Ela and Buddha, the illegitimate child of Soma, the moon god. The tale of his love for the nymph Urvashi is one of the few tales that has caught the Indian imagination for generations. First told in the Rigveda, it has been treated dramatically by Kalidasa in his Vikramorvasiyam. Pururava's youngest son, Amavasu, founds the kingdom of Kanyakubja. The dynasty again splits into 2 after the reign of Ayas, the eldest son of Pururavas. Nahusa, the eldest son of Ayas, obtains the position of Indra in the heaven but is banished from the when he lusts after Sachi, the wife of Indra. Katravda, another son of Ayu, establishes the dynasty of Kashi. His descendants were called Kazayas. Nahusa's son and successor Yayati was a renowned conqueror and was reckoned as a Chakravartin. He had 5 sons: Yadu and Turvasu from Devayani, the daughter of Sukra, the preceptor of Asuras, and Druhu, Anu and Puru from Samishta, the daughter of Asura king Versipava. Yayati installs Puru, the youngest but the most dutiful son, as his successor in the ancestral sovereignty in Prathana. The elder sons obtained the outlying areas. For the sons of Yayati descend the 5 famous royal lines of the Yadavas, the Turvasus, the Druhas, the Anavas and the Pauravas. Immediately after Yadu, the Yadava dynasty is bifurcated, the main line continued by Khrosti and the independent line of Hihayas led by Sahasrajit. The Yadava branch first develops a great principality under King Sasubindu, who becomes a Chakravartin. King Mandata, the son of Uvansva, the king of Ayodhya, marries his daughter Bindamati and rises to eminence. He follows in the footsteps of his father-in-law, extends his sway very widely and becomes a Chakravartin himself. His son Purakutsa marries Narmada, the river goddess. Another son, also a famous king, called Mukukunda, builds and fortifies a town on the bank of that river. It was Mahismati. Soon thereafter, the Druhu king Gandhara retires to the northwest and establishes a kingdom of Gandhara there. His descendants scatter into the regions beyond India and establish many Maleksha principalities. Later, the Anavas divide into 2 branches under Usanara and Tidiksu. The sons of Usanara establish separate tribes of the Yodhas, Ambastas, Navarastras, Kremilas and Sivas in eastern Punjab. Savi, the son of Usanara and the originator of the Sivas in Shivapura, is celebrated in the Indian mythology for his generosity. His sons set up the kingdoms of Versadabas, Madrakas, Kaikas and Saviras, and occupy the whole Punjab. The other branch of the Anavas under Tidiksu moved east and founded the principalities of Anga, Banga, Kalinga, Suma and Pundra. The Hihayu king Tavarya had the Bhagavis as his priests and enriched them. His kinsmen tried to recover the wealth, but the Bhagavas resisted. The Hihayas then maltreated them, due to which they fled to different countries. Gadi was then king of Kanyakuba and had a daughter Satyavati. The Bhagava Silcika marries her and begets a son Jamadani. About the same time Gadi has a son Visvamitra. In the solar line, Trayaruna, in heir contemporary of Gadi and Tavarya, ruled the kingdom of Ayodhya at this time. On the counsel of his priest Vasitha, he exiles his son Satyavrata, also called Trisanku. After Trayaruna, Vasitha refuses to perform Trisanku's consecration. A little later, Visvamitra of Kanyakubu tries to obtain the wishing Count Nindini of Vasitha. A fierce combat follows between the two, in which Visvamitra is defeated. Convinced of the superiority of Brahmins, he resolves to become a Brahmasi and relinquishes his throne. When engaged in austerities, Visvamitra is befriended by Trisanku. He then champions Trisanku's cause, performs his royal consecration, and on his death elevates him in his living body to heaven. The rivalry of Visvamitra and Vasitha continues even during the reign of Hariskandra, Trisanku's son. Hariskandra had son Rohita, whom he had vowed to sacrifice to Varuna. He postponed the sacrifice for many years, due to which he is afflicted with dropsy. Rohita, on Vasitha's advice, to propitiate Varuna, buys a Jigatis son Sunasepa as sacrificial victim in his stead. When about to be killed, Sunasepa chants the Varuna mantra, taught to him by Visvamitra. Varuna appears, grants the boy his freedom and the king a cure from the disease. Visvamitra then adopts the boy as his chief son with the name Devarata. A number of Visvamitra's sons, who protest against the status given to Devarata, are cursed by their angry father to become outcasts. They become the ancestors of Dasu tribes, such as the Andhras, Muchabas, Palindas, etc. Visvamitra subsequently obtains the position of a Brahmasi. In In the High-Harya line, Tavarya was succeeded by his son Arjuna Kartavarya, who was a mighty king. After a long reign he has dissension with Jamadagni. As a result, Parasurama, the son of Jamadagni by Renuka, the daughter of a minor Ikshvaku king, kills Kartavarya Arjuna, whereupon Kartavarya's sons killed Jamadagni. In revenge, Parasurama resolves to slaughter the entire class of warriors, and so far succeeds that only 5 survive to continue the great dynasties. After Kartavarya, the Hijas divided into 5 collateral tribes: the Talajangas, the Vitihotras, the Avantayas, Tudikaras and Jatas. They attack Ayodhya and drive King Bahu from the throne. They also attack, defeat and drive the Kasi king Devodasa from Varanasi. Pratardana, the son of Devodasa, subdues the Vitihotras and recovers the throne. A little later, Bahu begets a son Sagara, and Sagara defeats all those enemies, regains his kingdom and destroys the High-Haryu power for good. Sagara had 60,000 sons who insult Kapila Rsinar, in turn, reduced to ashes by him. Therefore, Sagara is succeeded by his grandson Amsuman on the throne of Ayodhya. With the reign of Sagara, the Krita Yuga comes to an end. The Treta Yuga Bhagiratha, the great-grandson of Sagara, brings down the divine river Ganges to earth to expiate the sins of the sons of Sagara. Shupana is the next prominent king in the dynasty, made famous by his association with Nala, the king of Nisadas. Nala married Damayanti, the daughter of Bhima, the Yadava king of Vidarbha. The delightful story of the marriage and the unhappy sequel of his subsequent temporary loss of his kingdom and destitution through gambling is in the Mahabharata, told to Yudhishthira suffering in similar circumstances. After a long eclipse, the Paurava line is revived by Dusyantha, a near contemporary of Bhagiratha. He marries Sakuntala, the daughter of Visvamitra, and begets Bharata. Bharata is crowned as a Chakravartin and later gives his name to the dynasty, to the great fratricidal war between the Kauravas and Pandavas, and to India itself. His 5th successor Hastine shifts the capital to a place in the Upper Doaba and calls it Hastinapura after himself. Soon after Hastine, the Bharata dynasty is divided into 4 separate lines, the most well-known being the main Paurava line and the Panchala line. The Panchala king Devodasa is celebrated in the Rigveda as the destroyer of 99 forts of the Dasu Sambhara. His sister was Ahalya, the wife of Gautama. She was deceived by Indra and expelled into the forest by her husband on account of her infidelity. The solar line once again ascends under the benevolent kingship of Raghu, Aja and Dasharatha. The story of Rama, Dasharatha's son, forms the subject of the poem Ramayana by Valmiki. The intrigues of his stepmother Kaikeyi result in the exile of Rama, his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana to the forest. In the forest, Sita is abducted by Ravana, the king of Rakshasas, and imprisoned in Lanka, his capital. Rama forms an alliance with the monkeys and the bears of the forest and lays a siege of Lanka. Ravana is ultimately defeated and slain by Rama. He then returns to Ayodhya with his wife Sita and ascends the throne. With Rama's disappearance, the Treta Yuga comes to a close and the Dvyapara commences. After Rama, the solar dynasty goes into permanent decline. The Dvyapara Yuga, the Yadava line, is once again split into 2 separate lines after the reign of Bhima, the son of Satvat, by his sons Andarka and Vrsni, who style the dynasties after their respective names. Ugrasena, the father of Kamsa, was an Andarka, while Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, was a Vrsni. The Panchala Bharata Kurukshetra dynasty under its king Sanjaya now rises to prominence. His son Savanapiyavana was a great warrior, and the latter's son, Sudas, annexed several kingdoms. A confederacy of the kings of the Pauravas, the Yadavas, the Savas, the Druhyas, the Matsyas, the Turvasis and others, is formed against Sudas, who defeats them in a great battle near the river Parasni. This is called the Battle of the Ten Kings. The bulk of Rigvedic hymns represents only 5 to 6 generations of kings of this dynasty. The Paurava line continues through Ajamida, the son of Hasti. In his line, King Samvarana was defeated and exiled to the forests on the bank of river Sindhu by the Panchalas. Parjita identifies this Panchala king as Sudas, but the exact relationship between the dynasties, chronological and political, is not recorded. Later, Samvarana reobtains his capital from the Panchalas and marries Tarpati, a daughter of the sun. The playwright Kulasekara has immortalized the story in his play Tapati Samvarana. The son was Kuru and his descendants were called Kauravas. The line continues through Kira's second son Yanu. Vasu, a descendant of Kuru, conquers the Yadava kingdom of Sadi, and establishes himself there. His eldest son, Bhadrava, founds Charivraha in Magadha as his capital. His son Jarasandha extends his power up to Mathura in the north and Vidarbha in the south. Kamsa was a tyrant. He had imprisoned his father and usurped the throne. His nephew Krishna kills him and restores the old king to his throne. This rouses Jarasandha's wrath and he attacks Mathura. Krishna along with the Andakas and Vrsnis migrate to the west coast and build a new capital Varavati in Saurashtra. Krishna then abducts Rukmini, the princess of Vidarbha, defeating her brother and marries her. In later life, Krsna becomes the friend of the Pandavas. The next famous king in the Kaurava line is Pratipa. His son, Santanu, supersedes his elder brother Devapi to the throne, whereupon no rain falls for 12 years. Devapi then acts as Ahotr and performs sacrifice for his brother and obtains rain. Santanu's grandsons were Dhritarashtra and Pandu, the former being blind, the latter ascends the throne. Dhritarashtra has many sons, of whom Duryodhana is the eldest, and Pandu has 5 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadeva. The sons of Dhritarashtra belonging to the elder branch were called Kauravas, and Pandu's sons, the Pandavas. The question of succession to the throne results in a feud between the two families, culminating in the appalling slaughter in the Bharata War. All the old Kshatriya dynasties of India, it is said, took part in the great battle, fighting on one side or the other. In the battle, which lasts for 18 days, the verses of Krishna enabled the hard-pressed Pandavas to win. The Mahabharata narrates the story of this feud in detail. Subsequently, the Yadavas are themselves engulfed in civil war, and Krishna withdraws to the life of an ascetic in the forest. Here he is accidentally shot and killed by a hunter. His grandson is re-established at Indraprastha by the Pandavas. Soon the Pandavas themselves crown Purakshetra, the grandson of Arjuna, on the throne of Hastinapura and retire to the forest. The Dvyapara Yuga closes with the death of Krishna. The Kali Yuga, Purakshetra, on a hunting expedition, disrespects Rsi Samika and is in turn cursed by his son Srngin to die from snake Taksaka's poison within 7 days. Taksaka buys off Kasyapa, the only person who has an antidote to the poison. At the end of 7 days, Purakshetra dies from Taksaka's bite. His son Janamejaya, who was a minor then, later hears his father's death from his ministers, and resolves on revenge. He organizes a rite to destroy all snakes. the snakes into the sacrificial fire by the power of the right. Asika, who was begotten to save them, enters the right and wins a boon of his choice by singing the praises of Janamejaya. He demands the proceedings be halted. Janamejaya cannot refuse and concludes the rite. It is during this rite that Vaisampayana, a disciple of Vyasa, narrates the Mahabharata to Janamejaya. Nikaksu, 6th in line from Paraksita, transfers his capital from Hastinapura to Kausambi in Vasta as the former city is ravaged by a flood of the Ganges. The line continues for many generations till Udayana, the famous king of Vatsa, who carries off Vasavadatta, the princess of Avanti. The tale is celebrated first by Gunadya in his novel Britakatha and later by Basa and Shudraka in the dramas Vapnavasavadatta and Vinavasavadatta, respectively. In Magadha, the descendants of Bhadradha and Jarasandha retain the throne till they are replaced by the Sisanaga dynasty, which among others include the famous kings Bimbisara and Ajatashatru. Mahapadhyama Nanda usurps the throne from the last king of the Sisanaga line. He overthrows all old Kshatriya dynasties, the Ikshvakas, the Panchalas, the Kazayas, the Haihayas, the Kalingas, the Asmakas, the Kuras, the Mathalas, the Surasenas and the Vitihotras, and subdues the whole central India. The Puranas hence call him the destroyer of all Kshatriyas and monarch of the whole earth which was under his sole sway. Conclusion: this lengthy history of kings and sages is rounded off by the bards with a hint of cynicism regarding the ephemeral nature of fame. Jaina tradition. The Jainas have their own version of traditional history, brought into line with the legends of the 24 Jainas who from time to time have refounded the religion on earth. Rama, whom the Jainas call Padma, appears as a divine hero and a Baladeva in a variant version of his life, whilst Krsna is similarly a Vasudeva. There are 9 each of these, Baladeva and Vasudeva heroes, and the 9 enemies, including Ravana and Jarasandha, with the Jainas and the 12 universal emperors Chakravartins. This makes up the 63 great men of the tradition. The emperors include Bharata and Sagara, and Brahmadeva Brahmadatta, who is familiar also to the Buddhists, but the others are not familiar elsewhere. 3 of them, including Santi, became Jainas also. The Jaina traditions seem to draw in part on ancient sources independent of those of the Brahmanas, as do the Buddhists also, and not merely corruptions of Brahmanical traditions. It is noticeable that the legends are much more schematic and regular than the others. 63 Salakyapuras Buddhist tradition. The Buddhists preserve another different version of the traditional history. According to them, in the beginning of the cosmic cycle, mankind lived on an immaterial plane where there was no need of food and clothing and no private property, family, government or laws. Then gradually the process of cosmic decay sets in and mankind becomes earthbound and feel the need of food and shelter. As men lose the primeval glory, distinctions of class arise and they enter into agreements with one another, accepting the institutions of private property and the family. With this theft, murder, adultery and other crime begin. So, the people meet together and decide to appoint one man among them to maintain order in return for a share of the produce of the fields and herds. This, then, was the first king called Mathasamata. He received the title of Raja because he pleased the people. The first Chakravartin, Mandatta, is 6th in descent from Mathasamata. Mandatta is followed by a long succession of kings. The most famous among them include Sudarsana, Sagara, Bharata and Rama Dasarathi. In this line was born a king called Karnika who had 2 sons, Gautama and Bharadvaja. Bharadvaja ascends the throne after his father's death, but dies without any issue. On the other hand, 2 children are born from eggs, which were formed from coagulated blood and semen of Gautama and hatched by the sun. From one of the eggs comes the famous Ikshvaku, who succeeds Bharadvaja and founds the solar dynasty. The 4 sons and 4 daughters of Ikshvaku are exiled to the foothills of the Himalayas due to the machinations of the stepmother. They intermarry amongst themselves to maintain the purity of the blood and later establish the towns of Kapilavastu and Koli. The descendants were called Sakyas. The famous prince of Asvantara was a near descendant of Okaka. Later, the Buddha is born in this dynasty. Itihasa is a source of actual history. Historian Romilo Tharpe discusses the problem of associating major lineages of the early tradition with archaeological evidence, understanding the Puranic genealogies as records of a general pattern of settlements and migrations, rather than factual information on history and chronology. She tries, however, to associate the chronology of the obviously more significant lineages, that of the Puru and the Yadavis, with different archaeological layers. Like Parjita, she divides the Puru lineage into 3 distinct phases, connecting phase 1 with the ochre-colored pottery, phase 2 with the painted grey ware, phase 3 being terminated by the Mahabharata War. The Yadava line is associated with the black and red ware, the geographical distribution of which is traced in connection with the different branches and migrations of the Yadava tribe, according to the Puranic sources. She concludes, however, more cautiously, by considering the problem of chronology and the question of identifying the Indo-Aryan speakers. Phase 1 being understood as a pre-Indo-Aryan lineage, which was taken over later into the tradition of the Aryan-speaking people. Influence on the classical Indian poetry. The rules of classical Indian poetics prescribe that the themes of the Mahakavyas and Niptakas should be primarily selected from the Itihasa. In accordance, great Mahakavyas such as Kalidas's Raghuvamsa, Kumaradas's Janaki Harana, Bhatti's Ravanavada Abhati Kavya and Amp.C. have drawn the themes from the Ramayana and Bharavi's Kiritarjunya, Maga's Sisupalavada and Srihas's Naishadi Yakarita and Amp.C. For the Mahabharata,